I was discriminated against my whole life due of my golden child sister, and I finally got my sweet revenge on my wedding day. My entire life, I faced discrimination because of my sister, the so-called golden child. Her favoritism by our parents was blatant and constant, and it shaped my life in the worst ways. She even had the audacity to try and steal the spotlight on my wedding day by attempting to walk down the aisle. But after years of enduring her and my parents' biased treatment, I finally got my revenge. From the beginning, my parents always favored my sister, and they didn't even try to hide it. If she accused me of something, they believed her without question, and I would be punished harshly. Meanwhile, when I had undeniable proof of her wrongdoings, she'd receive a slap on the wrist, and somehow I'd still get scolded too. Even on my birthday, the cake was always her favorite flavor. My parents acted like they didn't know I hated it. They consistently bought her more gifts than me, and whenever we went out, it was always to places she wanted to visit, even if it was supposed to be my day. As she grew up, my sister became spoiled and self-centered, treating me like her personal punching bag. At first, she ignored me most of the time, but things got worse when we became teenagers. She ended up with no friends, and her bitterness turned me into a target. Did her friends leave because she was mean? I'll never know, as we were never close. My parents, of course, ignored her faults. They constantly boasted about her achievements while conveniently sweeping her issues under the rug. At the same time, they used my flaws, real or imagined as material, to tease me. When I noticed my sister was no longer hanging out with anyone at school, I realized she had no friends. In contrast, I was fairly popular, which seemed to make her despise me even more. Suddenly, I went from being ignored to being her main target. She accused me and my friends of various things, and my parents always sided with her. They stopped letting me hang out with anyone, saying, "They're not good people, according to your sister," or accusing me of trying to distance myself from the family. What saved me from complete isolation was my extended family. Many of them lived nearby, and I got along well with my cousins, despite the age differences. During one family gathering, my cousins invited me to an event, but I sadly declined, explaining I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. When they asked why, my naive younger self bluntly replied, "Because I'm not allowed to have friends since my sister doesn't have any." That comment got back to the adults, and they tore into my parents for their treatment of me. Though I was scolded for lying and grounded for a month, my parents did ease up slightly afterward, and it was worth it. The humiliation of our extended family knowing about her lack of friends was too much for my sister, so she demanded to switch schools. My parents, of course, obliged, even though it meant a longer commute and higher expenses. At her new school, she managed to make friends, but she never went back to ignoring me. Having tasted the power of making my life miserable, she doubled down. Her new friends would come over and bully me, which my parents brushed off as just teasing. I never invited anyone over, because my sister would accuse them of stealing, and my parents would believe her. Still, I grew closer to my cousins, as my parents knew better than to treat family the same way they treated me. Things escalated when I got my first boyfriend. I didn't want to bring him home, but my parents insisted. At one point, we were separated, and he came to find me, furious. My sister had been flirting with him, wearing revealing clothes and batting her eyelashes. She told him I was terrible, and that she'd be a better match for him. He immediately ran to tell me. When my sister found out, she flipped the narrative, claiming my boyfriend had tried to flirt with her. Predictably, my parents believed her. They forbade me from dating such a horrible boy, and the relationship eventually ended. When I got another boyfriend, the same thing happened. My sister made a move, was rejected, and accused him of inappropriate behavior. Again, my parents took her side, calling me a bad judge of character. I tried pointing out the pattern, but they refused to listen. The strain was too much, and that relationship also fizzled out. By high school, I refused to have serious relationships. I was okay with casual dates and making out, but I avoided anything deeper because I knew my sister would ruin it. Luckily, this phase of my life didn't get back to my parents or my sister. The double standards continued in every aspect of our lives. My sister had more spending money and looser curfews. She could go wherever she wanted, whenever she wanted, while I was constantly restricted. Whenever I pointed out the unfairness, my parents would dismiss me with, "It's because she's older." But when I reached the same age, nothing changed. All of this built up years of resentment and anger within me, but I stayed quiet. I waited. My sister, thinking she could always get away with anything, made the mistake of trying to outshine me at my own wedding. That was the final straw. I won't go into all the details of how I got my revenge, just know that I exposed her for the spoiled, manipulative person she truly was. For the first time, my parents couldn't protect her. The tables turned, and I finally felt the satisfaction of watching her crumble under the weight of her own actions. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my life and proving that I deserved better. After years of being overshadowed, I finally stepped out of her shadow, and it felt incredible. I had been subjected to favoritism and discrimination my entire life because of my sister, who was always treated as the golden child. She even tried to walk down the aisle at my wedding, which was the final straw in a long history of unfairness. My parents always favored her, and it was never subtle. If she accused me of something, they'd believe her without question and punish me. If I had undeniable proof that she was in the wrong, they would give her a lighter punishment and find a way to scold me too. My birthday cakes were always her favorite flavor, and they pretended not to know that I hated it. She always received more, whether it was treats, gifts, or special attention, while I was made to feel like an afterthought. They would always prioritize her, even when events were meant to be about me, like family outings. She grew up spoiled, and her behavior worsened over time. When we were teenagers, she initially ignored me, but that soon changed. She turned from the occasional bully to someone who constantly tried to bring me down. She accused me and my friends of things, and my parents used her accusations as proof of my bad judgment. My friends were restricted, with my parents using her claims to control who I could associate with. They constantly compared me to her, asking why I couldn't be more like her, which only added to my resentment. While I had a strong bond with my cousins, as they lived nearby, my parents never allowed me to go anywhere without making excuses about my sister's social status. When I confided in my cousins about how my sister's behavior was affecting me, they were outraged, and this made its way back to my parents, who scolded me and grounded me. Afterward, they gave me some leeway, but the damage had been done. When my sister switched schools, it was after the embarrassment of our extended family learning about her lack of friends. She quickly became more social at her new school, but the situation between us never improved. Her bullying intensified, and she continued to accuse me of things to make my life miserable. Whenever my friends visited, I was constantly accused of things I didn't do, and my parents believed her over me. I never invited friends over, because they would either accuse them of stealing or make my life harder. When I had my first boyfriend, things took an unexpected turn. I didn't want to bring him home, but my parents insisted. At one point, he came to find me to tell me that my sister had tried to flirt with him, wearing skimpy clothes and telling him how much better she was than me. My boyfriend ran off to find me, but of course, my sister twisted the story and told my parents that he had tried to flirt with her. My parents believed her, which further strained our relationship. They never trusted my choices and constantly compared me to her, believing she made better decisions than I did. As we got older, it became clear that my parents only reinforced this bias. While she got more spending money, a relaxed curfew, and the freedom to go wherever she pleased, I was always tightly controlled. When I pointed this out, they dismissed it as if I was imagining things, or told me I couldn't be trusted like my sister. When it came time for my sister to graduate, she was accepted into college, but there was no scholarship or any notable achievement. My parents made a big deal out of it, even though her grades were poor. In contrast, my grades were often excellent, but they refused to acknowledge my achievements, claiming it was nothing special, since I always did well. They boasted about paying for her college education, yet they told me that I would have to work and save for mine, as they had no money for me. They also insisted I could get student loans, but they would have to approve the decision. Scholarships weren't even mentioned, and they doubted my ability to succeed in college. I didn't argue with them, though I knew what their intentions were. I silently accepted their refusal to help me and moved forward with my life. I focused on studying, seeing college as my only chance for freedom. Eventually, I earned a scholarship to a decent college, and knowing my sister would be upset, I shared the news on social media, thanking my parents in the post to avoid further conflict. My parents initially pretended to be proud, but later tried to discourage me, citing my sister's struggles in college as proof that I'd failed too. I stuck to my decision, and college became my refuge. I was finally able to be happy, though I still kept my distance from my parents, visiting them on holidays but never introducing anyone I was dating. My sister, on the other hand, never graduated and moved back home after dropping out. She worked at the same company as my mom, all thanks to my mom's connections. My parents treated this like an achievement, boasting about her success, while continuing to overlook mine. I met my husband during this time, and while people were shocked that we were together, it made sense for me. He was the type of person who didn't let slights slide. He clapped back immediately. He pushed me to stand up for myself, something I had been unable to do my entire life. When we decided to get married, we opted for a low-key ceremony with our honeymoon in Europe, instead of spending too much on a wedding. Since my parents were still in my hometown and his family was spread out, we chose to get married there. We sent out the engagement announcement and saved the date notice months ahead. At this point, my parents insisted on meeting my fiancée. I wanted to stand up for myself and refuse, but I struggled. The distance from home had made me question if my parents weren't as bad as I had thought. My husband, on the other hand, was ready for this. He had even bought a high-quality recorder to secretly capture everything. He was excited, thinking of all the ways he could reject my sister's advances, insult her, and share the recording with the family. So he went, alone and eager to meet them, and came back ecstatic. "Babe, you won't believe what they said. We can ruin them so badly. There are so many possibilities," he said. I was confused but wanted to hear the recording. He wisely suggested I listen to him first so I wouldn't misunderstand. When he sat down with my parents and sister, instead of flirting with them, they started with complaints about my judgment. After some grumbling, they made an offer on condition. My sister would walk down the aisle at my wedding in a wedding dress. They argued that, as my younger sister, she should at least have the experience of walking down the aisle before me, since it wasn't appropriate for a younger sister to marry first. They insisted on her having the wedding dress experience, complete with pictures and a cake. Now my husband took over. "Hell hath no fury like a man seeking revenge," he said. When I heard that, my mind almost short-circuited. I had so many insults lined up, but something inside told me to string them along and play it cool. So I told them I needed to think about it. I ran out of there before they saw the storm coming. Back to me, I was shocked. The distance had made me soften, and I had convinced myself that maybe they wouldn't go that far. But my husband's love for drama and revenge kept me grounded. We spent hours coming up with ways to make their lives miserable. From the ridiculous to the somewhat plausible, we explored all the angles. Then we called his much more reasonable brother to help. After some back and forth, we decided on a plan. We'd give them the wrong venue address, act like we agreed to their terms, but when the time came, we'd hire security to prevent my sister from entering. It wasn't the most extreme option, but it would work. My husband's brother scolded us for it, though he understood why we wanted revenge. He also pointed out that our plan might backfire and get us sued, so we compromised on something safer. The next step was critical. My husband went back to my parents and pretended to be on board with their idea. He told them I might not be happy about it, but that I was just non-confrontational. He also explained that I didn't like conflict and would probably avoid making a scene. But, he said, marriage was important to me, so maybe I'd accept their help after all. He suggested a compromise where they could help fund the wedding, if it meant my sister could walk down the aisle first. It worked. My parents and sister bought into the plan. They seemed happy and naive. My sister even started skipping around like a child, celebrating. Meanwhile, my husband assured them that this was my idea all along, using their own words against them. From that point, it was all about the deception. My parents and sister thought they were tricking me, but we were using them. My husband convinced them to pay for the most expensive options for the wedding, even though we'd chosen the lowest priced options initially. He'd take my sister to the venues, complain about the budget, and then my parents would jump in and offer to pay for the best. The same went for the photographer, the flowers, and the cake. When it came to the dress, things got complicated. My parents wanted me to wear a dress I didn't like, nothing horrible, but definitely not my style. We'd planned to say yes, and then simply not use it, but my mom sent me a message about it, just so there'd be proof. And with that, our plan to turn their manipulation back on them was well underway. I decided that I had to stand my ground, refusing to give in. My husband went to talk to my parents, telling them he'd try to figure out a way to handle things. Meanwhile, my sister suggested ruining my dress to force me into wearing the one my parents wanted. My husband pretended to agree, and throughout all this, we made sure that no communication was done through text. I would always respond to my sister when she tried messaging him, reinforcing the idea that I was the controlling, neurotic person he had claimed I was. They bought it, and nothing was ever put in writing. Some might not like the idea of their partner speaking badly about them to their family, but I found it hilarious. I was so used to being treated like a doormat that the thought of being painted as controlling and paranoid was absurdly funny to me. I even egged him on to do it. I guess I have a weird sense of humor. And yes, my sister tried flirting with him, but he played it off, acting conflicted, to sell the story that he was on their side. He would tell them things without my knowledge, though he never mentioned we had hired security. It was all part of the plan. The wedding, which my husband and I originally considered simplifying by having a courthouse wedding to focus on our honeymoon, turned into an extravagant affair, yet we barely spent any of our own money. We ended up calling it payback for the emotional damage caused by my parents. It seemed my husband was enjoying the trickery more than he was the actual wedding planning. I didn't think it was possible, but he seemed thrilled by the idea of spending his Saturday talking wedding details with my family. The day of the wedding arrived. My parents, my sister, and my husband had worked out a plan. They'd wait until everyone was seated. Since the bride always arrives late, my sister would show up at the perfect moment so I wouldn't see her and try to stop her. She would walk down the aisle just as I was supposed to, and by the time I realized what was happening, it would be too late. As for my dress, we saved some fabric from the alterations, and my husband took it to my parents' house. He showed them the fabric, pretending he had ruined my dress, and said he needed to leave quickly to calm me down because I was upset. He told them he'd see them at the wedding. The real security had been placed in the crowd, and no one knew about him until my parents were seated. Once they were, we brought out the actual security, a guy who looked like a bodyguard. We told him to prevent my sister from entering, offering a generous tip if he kept everything confidential. The moment came. My parents got a text that my sister was less than 5 minutes away, so my dad signaled for the ceremony to start. My bridesmaids, who had been prepped to follow his lead, took their places without checking with me. My dad stood at the entrance, waiting for me. A friend, who wasn't part of the wedding party but was in on the plan, texted me to get ready. The friend's role was to create chaos if needed and stir the pot. When the bridal song started, I walked into the room, and my dad was shocked. He looked behind me, but couldn't see the entrance, so he had no idea what had happened with my sister. His phone rang, and I saw the caller ID. It was her. He mumbled something about something coming up and left me standing there. Gasps filled the room. The friend, following the plan, loudly asked what was going on, and I played my part, tearfully saying my dad had told me it wasn't supposed to be me walking down the aisle. The tears weren't fake, I was genuinely hurt, but I tried to hold it together. The friend loudly asked, "What did he mean by it? Shouldn't be you," so everyone could hear, and then ran off to create chaos at the door. My mom soon followed, and my husband's dad, who had been prepped for this moment, rushed to my side, took my arm, and led me down the aisle. He'd been warned that he might need to help, and seeing him in action made me smile. As I walked down the aisle, whispers filled the room as people tried to figure out what had happened. Some left to check what was going on, and when I reached my husband, all was well. He comforted me, joking that my sad face deserved an Oscar, and reassured me that he'd deal with my parents. The ceremony went off without any further issues. My parents never returned, and I noticed many guests leaving and coming back, but no one dared tell me what was happening. Eventually, someone whispered in my husband's ear, and he left the room. When he returned, he had a thunderous look on his face, but he quickly whispered that he needed to hide before he couldn't keep a straight face anymore. Here's the summary from everyone involved: friends, family, the security guy, and my husband. My sister arrived in her wedding dress, but the security refused to let her in. He told her she must be at the wrong venue since there was already a bride. My dad tried to argue, threatening the security guard with the police, but the guard stood firm, saying he was hired by us and was just doing his job. At this point, the situation unraveled. My dad realized it was too late and tried demanding entry from my sister, but it was already chaos. The friends started shouting and insulting my sister, stalling for time. Soon, my mom arrived, and more people started gathering, adding to the chaos. My parents were stuck in damage control, trying to explain what had happened, but it was too late. Everyone who learned the truth was horrified by their actions. When my husband was called over, he played it cool, acting confused and denying everything. He later joked, "Gaslight, gatekeeper, girl boss," and we both laughed at the success of our plan. My husband and I had a plan. I stood my ground, refusing to text anyone, especially my sister, and we made sure not to communicate with them through any texts. He went over there, pretending to see what he could do to handle the situation, while my sister came up with a scheme to ruin my dress, so I'd be forced to wear the backup one. She suggested it, and he pretended to agree. Meanwhile, we made sure not to send any messages that could be used against us. My sister was continuously texting my husband, but we kept a clean line of communication, with me responding only when necessary. This made it clear to them that my husband was truly on my side, and it helped cement the idea that I wasn't controlling. Some might think it's strange for a partner to talk badly about you to their family, but for me, it was hilarious. I egged him on to make them believe his exaggerations, and my twisted sense of humor made it even funnier. In the meantime, my sister did try flirting with him, but he acted conflicted, playing his role to sell the idea. My husband was pretending to tell them things, but in truth, he didn't say anything that wasn't part of the plan. To make it seem real, we had hired security, but kept it hidden from everyone, even our parents, until the right moment. As the wedding day approached, everything was in place. My parents and sister thought they had a plan to ruin my day, believing that by having my sister arrive at the wedding, just as I was about to walk down the aisle, they would catch me off guard. My sister would walk down the aisle, and I would be left looking like a blyke. To make sure they couldn't carry out their plan, my husband had taken some leftover fabric from my dress alterations to my parents' house and showed them as proof that my dress was ruined. He then told them he needed to leave to calm me down and promised he would return later. We knew they were trying to sabotage us, but we had everything under control. The real security team was in place by the time my parents arrived, and we made sure the guest list had a woman checking off names at the entrance. She wasn't actually part of the team, but when my parents walked in, they saw her and assumed she was just another staff member. When it was time to get things started, the wedding began without a hitch. The moment came, and I walked down the aisle. My dad, however, wasn't prepared for what was about to unfold. He looked behind me, expecting to see my sister, but when he saw the look on my face and heard my husband's alleged confession, he panicked. The phone rang, and it was my sister calling him. He quickly mumbled something and dashed off, leaving me alone with my thoughts. A friend from the crowd, not in the wedding party, created a distraction, which allowed the security to block my sister from entering the venue. My parents tried to stop it, but we were one step ahead. My dad was furious, trying to escalate the situation, but the security was having none of it. My friend then loudly questioned what was going on, demanding answers, as my mom and dad scrambled for control. Meanwhile, I stayed calm and stuck to the plan. When the moment was right, my dad and sister were exposed for their lies. After the chaos, we had the most memorable wedding. My husband played along with the angry facade for a little while, but soon enough, the real smiles came out. We celebrated, laughing at how everything had worked out perfectly. No one knew exactly what had transpired backstage, but the peace and joy at the ceremony were undeniable. The day we had planned as a simple courthouse wedding turned into an extravagant celebration at no cost to us. Later, my parents attempted to reach out to us, trying to salvage their dignity by offering to pay for our plane tickets for the honeymoon. We refused, suspecting they'd only try to ruin it in some other way. My sister eventually messaged me, accusing me of humiliating her, calling my husband a two-faced snake for tricking them, and even implying that he was somehow cheating on me with her. She sent a string of unhinged messages, and my husband, being the protector he is, saved everything and sent it all to the family group chat to let them know what was happening. The messages were a wake-up call to everyone, and my parents tried to backtrack and accuse my husband of lying. He denied everything, calling their claims absurd. The truth was clear. They had no proof, no legitimate explanation for their actions, and they couldn't back up their story. We had everything documented, and the family saw through their lies. The humiliation they had planned for me was now their own to carry. Eventually, they stopped contacting me, and we enjoyed our honeymoon in peace. My husband, ever the strategist, had hoped for a bit more drama to call them out one last time, but he was content with how everything turned out. As for the reason they've treated me this way, I've never gotten a clear answer. My best guess is that I was an unplanned child, born shortly after my sister, and my parents didn't want another baby. Whatever the reason, it didn't justify the way they treated me, and after all these years, I finally got some revenge. My husband and I share a theory that they didn't expect us to go along with the wedding plan. They never thought I would stand my ground, and when we did, they were caught in their own lies. In the end, while I would have preferred a normal wedding without all the drama, I'm glad we finally got the closure we needed. No matter what they did or why they did it, my husband and I came out on top. Our wedding was exactly what we wanted.